Now let's talk on the economy. And that's the reason why we're also here as well. Because it all ties in. The formative or the initial comment of Brian Champon was that the Cedi is reverting. It's now 12, not 15, not 17 on the streets again. It's so-called stability, etc. These spring meetings, for which we have Ken Oforiatta, the finance minister, leading all that. How are we going to get the board approval so soon, alongside China's own concerns about, the way they handle debt on the continent?
Right. You see, it's good that we've come back to the economy. Of course, without a strong base and without a good economy, you may not have, peace, as we've highlighted earlier. So effectively, let's appreciate the geographic locations of our creditors, and then also look at the diversity of how our debt that we are carrying now as a country has been. I believe that the spring meeting gives us the opportunity to bring, all these creditors together. Earlier on, we've been drumming of the diversity of our debt and how we can negotiate. It's good to source for funds from different sources, and we all appreciate that. When the finance minister was borrowing, we got monies from China, got money from Eurobond market, bilateral agreement loans here and there. Sourcing funds from diverse sources is good, but when it gets to a point where you're about to default, it becomes difficult to negotiate, because each creditor sees the economy in different angle. To rely on it to lend to the country. And especially when you have Eastern Bloc creditor like China, you have Paris Club, you have Eurobond loans, which are more or less commercial loans. And we should understand that within the Eurobond market itself, we have diverse investors within the Eurobond market who are investing in Ghana as well. So I believe with the influential statement that are coming from the IMF Treasury, lady, the US Treasury as well, are good signals, which for me, if we should go by those statements, we'll get a soft spot. Looking at the spring meeting that is going on, because this is a point where all your creditors have come to gather. So if there should be a roundtable discussion, I think all creditors with their specific interest, will come to know. Because what I know about credit is that if a country or an entity or a sovereign body is in default, myself as a creditor may not wait, to give that kind of free space for the country to go and, provide that kind of soft spot for other creditors. So what is happening in that space is that at the end of the day, China may not want to give us that kind of soft spot for us to, oblige to Paris Club, credit. The same way, Paris Club may not want to give us that kind of soft spot for us to be obliged to, China's credit.
Why?
Yes, because each of them wants to play an advantage of getting their money from Ghana. And so until you get them at a central point where all of them will come together and say that at the end of the day, we are all sitting here, this is the information we have available to us. It's not Ghana has come to tell China a different story from, what the Paris Club is known of. So that kind of information asymmetry when it comes to, debt dissemination will be clear to all the, and this spring meeting is an advantage that we must take to get that kind of, opportunity so that we can negotiate on our debt.
Abiji, there's a critical point in all this. Zambia, they had the board approval last year, August. And even they're waiting for some 100 and something million, it hasn't come. So now we're saying that we have China and then the Paris Club together. So that is a good advantage. But if we look at the way the IMF and China too has behaved alongside the approval process for Zambia, should we be worried that we may even get a board approval and so the account will not be credited in time?
So, Roland, first of all, how much are we asking from the IMF?
3 billion.
Okay. We are asking for 3 billion.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay.
So, in 2022, the Bank of Ghana alone printed for the Akufo-Addo administration 50 billion Ghana cedis. That's more than 3 billion. Correct?
It won't be in terms of Ghana cedis.
At that time, looking at the exchange rate, that 50 billion that the Bank of Ghana gave to this Akufo-Addo administration was far in excess of the 3 billion we are asking. In fact, Bloomberg reports that Bank of Ghana had printed $3.5 billion to the government of Akufo-Addo. You see, Roland, what we should first acknowledge is that this current NPP administration is the worst man-made disaster ever to have happened to this country. The worst man-made disaster to have happened to this country. Our problem is not money. Our problem is that we are dealing with a government that is completely reckless with money. And that if it can put itself in check, will control our problems. What we should acknowledge first is that, listen, this is a government that has so much revenue than all administrations since 1992. Prof, in 2017, total tax revenue to this administration was 33 billion. In 2018, it was 39 billion. 2019, 45.6 billion. 2020, 47 billion. 2021, 57.06 billion. 2022, 75 billion.
What's your point?
The point I'm making is that in 6 years, Ghanaian taxpayers have given the Akufo-Addo Bawumia administration 298 billion Ghana cedis in taxes in 6 years. And with all this money, minus our oil, minus borrowed funds, minus grants, and we are saying that we are broke? I do not think so. And I'll do an analysis for you. See, when you pick the total, like 2023 budget, total expenditure is 205 billion Ghana cedis, 205 billion.
For a deficit of 61 billion.
Good. And of this amount, government is expecting to raise 140-something billion.
Yes.
In terms of taxes. With 61 billion in terms of deficit to be funded by either borrowing, among other things, right? Now, if you pick a situation where you have raised your expenditure to 105, you are in crisis situation. What do, Prof? When you find yourself in a crisis situation, at least even as a household, you cut down on expenditure. Your expenditure for 2023 is more than your expenditure in 2024. Sorry, 2022.
But government says that it has cut down. You didn't listen to the budget. Oh, workshops, lessened. They won't buy 4-wheel drives.
Do you know?
They will not give Christmas hampers.
Do you know?
The workshops will be organized in ministries or other MDAs.
At the time Akufo-Addo claimed...
You are saying that cuts are not drastic enough?
Please. At the time Akufo-Addo claimed he was cutting down on expenditure. 2022, one single cabinet retreat, cabinet ministers, 19, the president, the vice, and a few, like the Lord's Supper. 4 million Ghana cedis, cabinet retreat. It's in the out end they sent to parliament. So these are people who are not willing. You see, the issue is that it's supposed to be a shared responsibility. So citizens are taking part of the blame, government is taking part of the blame, right? Then we move. But citizens are sacrificing, but government is not willing. So you have a situation where government is telling you and I to tighten our belts because we are going to have a bumpy ride, right? But the very government that is telling you to tighten your belt, they don't even have a belt hole.
Oh, but here lies government is giving you an expenditure item
Let me,
SHS
but you
and
see,
some of
let
those.
me tell you the real.
One district, one
Let me
factory.
tell you the real politics behind what Akufo-Addo
One
is
constituency,
doing.
$1 million.
Let me tell you this, Prof. Do you know that this year interest payment and amortization is supposed to be 53 billion Ghana cedis? You are aware? Good. 53 billion. Now, what it means technically is that if you are servicing your debts, this is how much you use to service your debts. But because we have basically succeeded in restructuring our domestic debt, correct? We have announced a successful DDEP, correct? So if we have done a DDEP, technically what it means is that you are not going to use the entire 53 billion on debt service. So if you are not going to use the entire 53 billion on debt service, there's enough fiscal space for you. But even in the midst of this, you've just passed 3 taxes that is going to threaten businesses. Every reasonable person.
But we need to raise money.
I've already given you an indication that in 6 years, we have done 298 billion and there's nothing to show for it. So you have basically a government that had received more, but with little to show for it. But what is important is that, look, in the year 2020, COVID year, this administration had 33 billion Ghana cedis unmatched. No administration in a year got that kind of money before. Even in the midst of all this, you are telling us that what? You are broke. But do you know the real reason? This government had basically been stabilizing, quote unquote, the city because of the topic you gave. Let me just dovetail it. Had basically been stabilizing the city by doing something interesting. They call it financial engineering. But I think it's a very disingenuous way of managing the city. The annual $2 billion they've been injecting into the city. So this year, last year, they got the Bank of Ghana to give them 50 billion. That's almost $3 billion. This year, they want another 3 billion. So consistently from 2017, almost every year, they needed $2 billion consistently in order to shore up the city.
You are saying we're already on ICU?
Already. Oh. And you see, in life is said that. Look, Doc, you teach finance. You know that if you walk to the hospital for regular checkup, the possibility of having a sudden medical condition will be remote. But if you don't, there's a day you go to the hospital in stretchers in an ambulance.
So you are saying that
we
there
have
was a
basically
particular year that was post-COVID, we didn't get the dialysis, then we went in trouble.
That day we went into trouble.
That's okay. Your point has been made. But if you look at all this, I am thinking, I look at the 2023 budget, 2022, there are items that are there for which is beneficial to the citizens, and we need to pay for them. We need to raise taxes. What do you make of it?
Bro, thank you very much. I said this morning I will listen to Prof. Because I enjoy listening and watching him when he speaks on economic issues than to normal politics of the NDC that the Jews is trying to do. This is what I've been saying all the time when they have the opportunity at his disposal. The IMF spring meeting is very apt because basically it is going to seek that support that will enable us to restore some economic stability, macroeconomic stability, how we can sustain our debts, and to lay a foundation as to how we can take off. We were told, I recall, when Ken at one time, when he was addressing the media, that 70% of domestic revenue were used to service debts, i.e. the principal and the interest. These loans are not only that of Akufo-Addo. These are loans that were bequeathed to him, including his government.
Which loans?
NDC people.
Which loans?
The loans that they bequeathed, they left us. So I'm saying that when you have debts in your hands, you have debts that have come before you, that they were bequeathed to you. Okay. So you cannot say that because you are a government that debt that will be quick to you, you are not going to pay. Naturally, it's obvious. It's part of your liability. You inherit liabilities, and you inherit assets.
You have assets.
So you need to take care of them. So 70% of your domestic revenue, according to Kedofrata, is what you use to service. You'll be left with 30%. He was giving you figures or whatever. Yes, revenues were collected. So you need to pay off your debts. So out of that 30%, you have something for capital expenditure. And he's saying that they don't know what we use the money to do. Sometimes I get marveled.
Because the borrowing is excessive.
I get marveled because I remember when then candidate Akufo-Addo
500 billion.
was Kuda was doing his campaign and was saying that the road that he passes on, he drives on. At that time, are so bad. NDC has published a green book, unprecedented, what do you call it, development across the country. He hasn't seen one before. And then candidate Akufo-Addo was sleeping his vehicle when he was driving on those good roads until he assumed power. And he drove on the same road. And when he meets the chiefs first complain to him, no, please, our roads are so bad. Then you ask himself, but was it not the same road that JDM and NDC people said they have done it so unprecedented in their green books? It takes money to fix those roads. It takes money to fix those roads. From his region, Volta region, heading towards Oti, that Eastern Corridor Road that he gave to his friend, Kanazui, whatever they call him. He did some portion of it. Go and see that road from Jasikan all the way to Nkwanta. Then from Pandai, just after the river, from Pandai to Wulensi, to Bimbila, to Yendi, all the way to Gushigo. It takes money to fix those roads. So when you come and sit here, and you say that you don't see what they have used the money for. Well, that your mama is driving on those roads to campaign with 20 Land Cruisers and more driving on those roads.
So when the
but he forgets that those loans that were procured is what we are using to fix those roads.
But when we have a German ambassador and then even some of the representatives of our multilateral bilateral partners saying that we have racked up, if you look at our budgets over the last couple of years with expenditures ideally that we could have avoided. You are saying that is not true?
I haven't said so. It's because you are impatient to wait for me to finish my analysis. That you want to distort my flow with this your question.
No, that's not
what I'm saying. No, that's not what I'm saying. So because I was doing my analysis, I'm not saying that what a German ambassador has said and what other people are saying.
But they observe.
I agree. They are legit. It's a legitimate concern they are expressing. That can we look at this way of the expenditure? It's fine. But the president and his government are doing the needful. Yes, we appreciate it. So there's a need for us to cut and make sure we control some of our expenditure and all that. And that is being done. And I'm saying that when you hear the NDC saying that we have overborrowed and nothing is to show, that is why I have a challenge and the difficulty.
You haven't overborrowed.
Roland, whatever we have borrowed, we are using the money to develop this country.
Okay.
When you go into the educational institutions, all the infrastructure that you are seeing, the health facilities that we are building, some have been completed, some are ongoing. It's money that we use to fix these things. The rails all over, it is money that we use to fix them. So I'm not sitting here to say that the country is not that hard. I appreciate it. That people are going through. It's the same rating agencies that are telling us that they are giving us negative ratings because we've never been able to pay off our debts. Therefore, there's a need for us to raise revenue. Here we are today, Prof. We are unable to go to the capital market because we are stuck. What do we do? Internally, is it possible for us to raise some revenue? It is very difficult. But this is just an interim measure that government is doing to see how best we can raise revenue.
That's why the question is always asked.
You understand?
Now, who caused them?
Please, respectfully to your audience and your good self and my co-panelists, there's an opportunity for us to raise revenue. I know it's very difficult. It is. But the way this country has also been turned into a dumping ground. I was in the sixth parliament. In the sixth parliament.
By who?
Cool down, please. Calm down. I was in the 6th Parliament.
Who allows the tax waivers?
Roland Walker.
You spoil the table.
Please don't do that. You see, when you do some of these things, you distort my flow. You get me confused, and I know that is your strategy, because you're not happy to listen to me.
Oh, it's not true.
Yes, that's exactly what you are doing.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
So don't do that.
Okay. Please.
So when Honorable Henry Disu, my senior, initiated the International Trade Commission bill, that is a bill of the president at the time. One of the conditions is to avoid dumping of some of these foreign products into our country. These fruit juices that we have all over, dumping left, right, center, all over.
But is it not true that if you look at the numbers, since the Akufo-Addo government came, we've wrapped up and opened up the space to the point that even from the last budget, as I read it, our imports, and you look at the numbers, are close to the numbers of some 10 billion. We're talking dollars, right?
Roland.
And then particularly their products, items like some grains, like rice, just normal horticultural crops, vegetables. And I did a whole documentary on this, where in numbers racking up to 200 million tomatoes, for example. We have to go to Burkina Faso and some of them. We open up the space. We could have done some of these things here.
Roland.
Yes, sir.
A lot has been done. When you look at the numbers in terms of agriculture, when you compare, I don't have the statistics with me here, that of ours and theirs, we have done far better than what they did.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the fact that we need to work harder, we need to promote our farmers, we need to encourage our farmers to make sure we produce, because our taste for exotic food is what is killing us.
Okay.
In my home, Prof, you cannot go and buy foreign rice, because I wanted to promote local rice. When you are driving from my great-grandmother's area, from Angono towards Dabala Junction, on your left, there is a rice mill factory there. And you see these women, he knows what I'm talking about. You see these women selling on tables, these packed rice. This is the kind of thing.
Why is it that you are different from the finance? Why is it this thing you don't tell the finance?
Stop being your mischief here.
Prof, so now since you are the middleman, you are the academician, the reality is that if you have, this is your money, you're spending this as it is, and you draw a budget that exceeds this, there's an opportunity cost. That's what at least you taught me at the basics. Or I was taught by your colleagues at the basics. But you also have an opportunity that if you have this, you can reduce, instead of buying shoe at a boutique in East Legon, to go and buy Fos at Katamanto. And then other items that could make this reduce to this. Is that not the basic economics? Is that not how we should run the country if we know we're in difficult?
That is the basic. You know, if you look at budgeting, we have reallocation and realignment of budget.
Very good.
For which, if you think there are some part of expenditure lines that are not needed, you may cut them, or not. Something that is not pressing so much that you need them, you may have to cut them. But Roland, let me take you back a bit and tell you that, you see, Ghana has gotten to a point where we've missed the opportunity of borrowing to grow economy.
We have?
Yes.
Why?
We have missed it. The reason why I'm saying this is that anytime you are borrowing, we call something debt service capacity. And this debt service capacity is always related to your current cash flows, which I'm happy when Honorable aligned the debt to revenue, not GDP.
That's the real thing.
All these years we have been caressing, the economy, targeting the economy, politically playing with debt to GDP. You can have a big GDP, but not all your assets within the GDP are creating that revenue that you need. Very, very important. And so when we were, and I was happy he made reference to 70% of our revenue servicing our debt. That was when we were supposed to get to know that we've got into a threshold.
Which year was that?
Around 2019.
When you gave the alarm.
Exactly.
They didn't listen.
So
the finance minister especially.
Yeah, for political reasons, that wouldn't happen. But technically, it should have happened. You see, when you look at these numbers carefully, it will give you the signal. And everything was on the ground, telling you that, look, you've gotten to a threshold where you have to tone down. And so I was not surprised when you hear from the political circles that government is excessively borrowing. Because immediately your debt service capacity hit a certain threshold and you continue to borrow, you are more or less excessively, borrowing. So those statements that were coming, I was not surprised to hear that. But then another thing we need to, also appreciate is that after hitting this, our debt service capacity, that we have a threshold of, I'm answering your question where you said, okay, fine, you read the budget, you know very well that when you increase your expenditure, there should be a commensurable, revenue to match it up, for which deficit will be very, small. At the end of the day, even if, you have to finance a deficit, it's supposed to be a very small deficit to finance, for which, if you are to raise money within, the environment, you shouldn't have problem. But look at when we're reading the budget and the situation on the ground. By that time, we had been, banned from the Eurobond market. And I'm carefully, choosing that word, banned from the Eurobond market, because true. It's a market.
In quotes.
Yes, in quotes.
So it's free entry and free exit.
It's a market. It's free entry, free exit. The energy is a marketing person. Free entry, free exit. Yeah. So effectively, you can't be banned, but circumstances will stop you from going there. You are reading a budget, which previous years, your budget, revenue target was, 2022 was around 100 billion. You jump your revenue target to, 145 billion. For which, at the end of the day, your expenditure was around 140-something billion, 135 billion at the time, 2020.
So what should we have been doing?
We should have cut down expenditure.
Yes. In which areas do you expect?
Well, you see, when you are in a situation where you are pressed, you don't think so much of a long term. So CapEx is one of the long-term investment. I know there are some pressing needs and other things.
Government capital expenditure.
Yes, capital expenditure. Government started certain projects that it must be finished. I do appreciate that. And normally, when you start a project and you halt it, it comes at a cost. But then also, we should have looked at not to start new projects. Let me put it that way. Not to start new projects. And then also, look at, the possibility of, a situation where you're going to call for debt restructuring. Debt restructuring, and you are reading a budget which you need to finance about 61 billion. It's conflicting.
Yes.
Because you know very well that debt restructuring will come and shake up the system. Will come and reduce the trust that investors have in what? Investing in government bonds. Because whatever the case may be, if you are financing deficit, you need to raise money. As of the time that we were banned from the Eurobond market, I knew very well that the domestic market is going to have a serious shakeup.
Because there are external players also
Exactly.
playing domestically.
Exactly. Investing domestically. And once they see the signal, things not being rewarded very well, they will start, removing their investment. And that will distort the kind of, financial structure we have. So effectively, we should have cut down our expenditure. Drastically. And I was dreaming of cutting down expenditure in areas where you don't start new existing projects that are ongoing, you may continue with them. And then also goods and services, where most of the hidden bits are. And I can tell you that most of the, policies that were rolled out, most of the monies went into capacity building. Very little went on the grounds into the core grasp of the project.
Some of those things.
So let's take, for instance, planting for food and jobs. Clearly, if planting for food and jobs, we have to go by, the policy and the objective of it. At this time, food inflation shouldn't have led, our inflation. food inflation should have neutralized other inflations, the imported ones, especially, fuel and all those. But we didn't see that. Okay. You see food inflation going up. So effectively, it tells you that, yes, indeed, government has been spending. We appreciate that government has been spending. But then you see, you can be doing you can do expenditure, but if the expenditure is not hitting the core growth of the economy, trust me, it will not build up into the expected revenue that you need.
All this that you say, very academic and very practical. Why is it that when these are re-echoed by you academics, civil society, and of course it's to the advantage of the opposition, let's say the NDC, all of you are, how do you feel when all of you are put together as being untruthful and then anti-government?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Is it because bad news?
I'm happy when you are tagged as an anti-government, because you don't expect, in 3 years, the old Chasano or Nimna. You don't expect somebody in leadership. I mean, Nana Akufo-Addo can be there and he might not be in control of every aspect of the economy. And even protocol can shield him to the extent that not all information he can have.
Or they'll only be telling him sweet things.
Exactly. So all these things are there, that is why we sit here. And even if you tag me to be going, and I'm happy, sometimes you hear information that you are with MPP. Sometimes you hear.
Even right now, I'm seeing it.
You hear that you are with NDC. That shows that you are neutral. Indirectly, it shows that you are neutral. So you are speaking to the minds of the people. So effectively, I would say that indeed we've missed that kind of opportunity that goes with borrowing. Every country that is borrowing wants growth. And when we had the opportunity to go to the Eurobond market, I saw it to be a plus. Because we did the fundamental things, we built up an economy where we won the trust of the global, space of credit, which we started, tapping into it. But we missed it up.
All right. Now,
Roland.
Oh, I wanted to ask one question. From where we are going now, what portends for us? I mean, just shortly before I go for the break, whether we get this board approval.
I was asking,
what should be our behavior?
That is, we should be conservative enough. But then I was asking myself that should we, by hook or crook, go for debt restructuring, or we should allow ourselves to go default? The reason why I'm saying this is that there's what we call cost of default, and there's what we call cost of debt restructuring. You may have
the balancing act.
You need to balance and get to know that there could be a time that if you put all the numbers together, look at the economic cost that will go with, debt restructuring. Of course, the finance minister is in Washington now. He went with entourage. I know somebody will say it's a peanut, to sleep in hotels and other things. Agents are going to be hired to negotiate on our behalf when it comes to, our Eurobond, Eurobond debt. All these things will come at a cost. But then when we get this debt restructuring and get an IMF program, what is holding up for the country going forward? You realize that the cycle of visiting IMF has been, that kind of ups and downs. Anytime we find ourselves with IMF, we seem to be financially disciplined. But immediately we exit IMF, we go off board. The reason why I'm saying this is that at the point where we were exiting IMF, 2018, 2019,
the KK period,
yes, we were doing almost a budget deficit of about 6%, which was almost penetrating the 5% that IMF, prescribed for us. But immediately we exited. The first budget we read, we jumped to 11% budget deficit. That should tell you that, at that point we've started, going back to, financial freedom, which brings about financial indiscipline that we know. Okay. So for me, I think we may have to look at all this. Self-discipline is key. You see, going to IMF, the 3 billion will not do anything. I know. It won't do anything. Our budget deficit is almost the 3 billion. It's almost. Not exactly, it's almost. But then,
1 billion.
yes.
Yeah.
But then,
with the current rate.
yes. But then, the soft benefit that IMF give us, going with the conditions, the soft benefit, going with the conditions they provide. Your budget deficit should be 5% to your GDP, zero financing from central bank, and the central bank has announced, zero financing in a way to prepare for the possible IMF conditionalities that are likely to come. But I'm saying that won't do anything. The reason being that we had 5%. Did we stick to the 5%? We had parliament that approved the removal of the 5% during the COVID time. Can we continue with such behavior and keep the economy going as expected? That could be the cost if we should go by the debt restructure. But if you default and possibly your economy slip into the lower middle income class, I mean, your grants will start swelling up, the freebies will start coming in. Those are the benefits we may have to look at. So you have to weigh the cost of what? The restructuring and the cost of the default, and possibly the benefit. So you do cost-benefit analysis of the default and cost-benefit analysis. It's not by hook or crook that we should get restructured. And in any case, can you trust government when it comes to, expenditure?
Now, we're going for a break. When we come back, we'll come and make some conclusive statements on us getting a board approval if the money comes, and whether where we are going, we can get out of IMF soon, and what do we need to do? And as an ordinary Ghanaian, what is the opportunity cost? What are we going to lose or gain from this? We'll be right back. Now, we have to wrap up quickly. So, the way it is, I mean, independent, this is not party issue, your experiences. How should we behave when we come back? And what will Ghanaians suffer?
I think that coming back from the IMF, if all things being equal, and I believe that the government has put measures in place that they need to follow up and to make sure that we can conform to all the dictates of what they've assured the nation. But I think that our people also continue to make demands of genuine demands that government cannot run away from. You see, one more to go and block a road, that if you don't fix this road for me, you don't need to come for my vote or not even come to my area to come and campaign. And as a sensitive government, you cannot say that you want to close your eyes or gloss over it and say that no, there's nothing I can do about it. So clearly, the IMF is giving us opportunity as to how, first of all, we can raise the necessary revenue to start paying some of our debts so that we can have some space. 2, how do we generate these revenues? 3, how can development also continue? All these things are very important, and I am very confident and sure that 2023 is a year of recovery by the Akufo-Addo's government to make sure that we can take ourselves out of these woods. I agree that the grounds are very difficult, are very hard, but under the current circumstance, there's little that we can do than to diversify and find out how we can raise some revenue from within. Our taste for exotic food must also change. This will also help in driving the government policy, the import substitution policy on the 1D1F policy. I see it as a very, very brilliant policy that when we follow it through, that Ghanaians are able to change our taste. We'll be able to develop this country and save some money to pay our debts and also develop.
Edoji, from where you sit and stand, and based on what you hear the analysis, what is going to be the opportunity cost so that Ghanaians don't overly seem to think that some Messiah has come? How are we going to suffer?
Okay, so...
Or gain?
Okay.
As a people?
Obviously, going to an IMF in the current state of the economy, I cannot readily tell you that this will be the gain. Because like I pointed out, if you are going to the IMF today for 3 billion. And in 2022, the Bank of Ghana alone gave you 3 billion. And it didn't solve the problem. Then the 3 billion is not the problem. It is you. I strongly believe that the current system and the current managers of the economy, to the extent that they continue the management style, the recklessness, nothing will come out from this IMF company. In any case, in any case, as we speak, per the 2023 budget statement, we're already running a deficit of 61 billion. Even if you do this IMF plus the current exchange rate, it will come to 30 billion. It won't solve the problem.
Even we're behind
In
our
fact,
revenues.
what we are dealing with is a bottomless pit.
Oh.
Yes. Look, do you know our contingent liabilities alone? Almost 100 billion Ghana cedis. And you see, anytime we raise these issues, our friends in the NPP try to water down the narrative. See, the real issues about the economy are so critical and dire. Agric, as at 2022, Agric grew at 0.7%.
Your source.
The
Budget.
2023 budget
It's in the budget.
Agree with you how many percent?
0.7%.
I'll go and check.
In 2016, it was 2.7%.
Go and check.
See, manufacturing, and you see, Tato, this is where it is so critical. Manufacturing in 2016 was 7.9%. 2022, manufacturing was 4.5%. Now, critical area construction, which gives an indication.
You said what? 2016, manufacturing was what?
Manufacturing was 7.9%. 2022, 4.5%. You can write it down. Construction, 2016, it was 8.4%. 2022, we are dealing with.
When you're going to Doomsaw and your
Yes,
manufacturing was
even now we are
7.9%.
dealing with.
It's not true.
Please, construction.
Under Doomsaw,
Oh, wait,
and your
wait.
of manufacturing was 7.9%.
2022,
Please, don't lie
construction
here.
is 4.2%. Your own budget statement, these things are there. Instead of
2016
referencing, you are talking about
was
life.
lie.
Please,
But you see,
Prof has a meeting.
you see,
Let's quickly wrap
the respected Kwan Pieni made a
Now
profound
it's your reference
statement.
point.
Oh yeah, very respected
Okay.
economist. He made a statement. He said, look, you cannot be taxing, like Bawumia, he said, you can't tax yourself out of what? The current challenges. Why is Bawumia not talking? Have you asked yourself critically? Why is the vice president quiet? The economic messiah, the poster boy of economic management, why is he quiet? Why is he no longer delivering the lectures? Can the anchor hold with an IMF bailout? Dr. Bawumia, I'm encouraging you to do. But you see, as we speak, do you know that yesterday, there were about 8 bonds that government promised these bondholders that they were going to pay. Do you know that they could only pay 3 out of the 8?
And they've issued a formal
And
statement.
government has defaulted.
It's okay.
And do you know something significant?
It's okay.
People are talking about the
Prof.
hold on, 30 seconds. The relative stability of the city. Prof, do you know where the problem is coming from? If you are not paying your debts, what happens?
Debt stands still. External debt stands still.
Exactly.
And we're not importing.
You are not. Our ports are empty
Yeah, the risk
through
concern
your
is-
recklessness. I mean, Senior, how did you guys get us
Yeah,
here?
the Jabato Swama, yeah.
No. How did you guys
Yeah,
get
yeah,
us
yeah,
here?
yeah, yeah,
How
yeah,
did
yeah.
you destroy this economy? Eh? How did you do it? Look, this disaster should not happen to this country
But Titus,
again.
you're a portman. You know that the port is.
Do you know why?
okay.
Everybody is moving to Togo. The people are
because of
moving.
the tax.
Yeah, because of the
It's okay,
taxes.
relax. Tomorrow you can
Titus,
come and do more. Oh,
Please, I beg you.
beg me.
I know Nanado listens
Edwin.
Stop
Now,
this,
Prof,
Stop
Prof,
this, your
Prof, you are the referee. You are the referee.
The president listens
It doesn't
to
mean
you.
that
Stop
what they are
this, your
saying is
No,
untrue.
look,
but-
I said- no, hold on.
G. Oh,
No,
Prof,
30 seconds.
Prof,
so that I
no,
can-
no, no,
oh.
no,
See,
Prof,
do you know
This is
Association
How-
going to help.
Okay.
Where we find
Association
ourselves
of
now
Ghana
is
Industry.
at the spring
Ah,
meeting. What are we going to do?
Prof,
The one we
The
come-
PR.
Can I have my
Prof,
Okay,
Prof.
Stop this, your
Prof,
politics.
Prof,
Your politics, your propaganda you are doing there.
I mean, to be realistic, the times are not good.
Yeah.
But what is the Ghanaian going to suffer? Or what should we prepare our minds for when we have the bailout? We're not saying we'll have the, but when we have the, what should we prepare our minds for? I mean, to be realistic.
I think whatever way we look at it, economic recovery is what we are trying to, have now. And it comes with pain. We shouldn't just look at it as, economic recovery. So whatever the case may be, you start having monies in your pocket or jobs will be created, very soon. It's quite a complex situation, looking at what is happening and then the conditions that has been given to that has been given to Ghana, contingent on our debt restructuring. It's quite, a complex situation. And so my advice is that, yes, Ghanaians will take some pain, but all the pains, we've started, with that pain now, looking at the introduction of the taxes, the 3 tax handles in addition to the existing ones. Clearly, if you buy something from ShopRite, and then you look at the taxes that are, listed down the main, price, you marvel. And those are the pains that are likely to wipe off, your income, here and there. But they are temporary pains that we must take. But then my advice from even the IMF, stated it on their Twitter space, that it would take a clear communication to the people for us to come out of this economic quagmire. Not to Ghana alone. It's a global statement they made.
To the developing
exactly.
country, especially those.
It would take a clear communication. And so we should take a clue from that and then stop giving political timelines on when we're going to get the IMF program. Not important.
February, March.
When it happens like that, you create that kind of chaos, uncertainty in the minds of the people.
And in the market.
And then on the market as well. So
purposes.
for me, that's my piece of advice. We'll take a pain, but we hope that there will be a reward to that pain going forward.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming through. And Prof can now go to his meeting. Now we have to...
Starboy, Chipsa.
He said he likes me. Say he likes me.
He's extend his regards.
Thank you. Chipsa. All right, so we're taking a break. We'll be right back.